Have you ever wondered why some people pass the CPA exam and some people fail? Here in this video, I want to share with you what exactly you need to be doing to pass the CPA exam. Now, some of you know that I'm one of those that went through the CPA exam successfully and I passed my papers, most of them highly. And of course, as a tutor, I've also learned and mastered the art of passing these CPA exams. And these are the same things that I keep emphasizing to my students. So watching this video, you're going to learn how you can actually pass the CPA exam, especially when you're in the examination room, okay? Because I know passing the CPA exam is not just only about reading and preparing, but also how you utilize the examination room also has a greater impact on if you pass the paper or not. So yours sharing with you is Samuel Ivanda. I'm your accounting coach, and if you're new to this YouTube channel, I would love you to subscribe to it because I will be sharing a lot of information around how you can actually excel at your CPA. So the first thing that you need to make sure that you need to be doing when you get into the examination room is have the right tools, okay? And by the right tools, I'm speaking about the right key requirements that you need for a CPA exam. Now, the things that you need, definitely, I will just list them, simple as them. Now, one of them that you need is your ID. Your iSPAL ID is very key, okay? And as well as your examination permit. Make sure that you have these things handy with you, because if you don't have them, you're going to be distracted when you get to the examination room. And not only those, you also need to have simple things like a calculator. You need to have at least 2 pens, okay? At least have a ruler. They are very simplistic things, but they have a greater impact on how emotionally you get yourself ready. Because if you don't have these things, you get distorted. There was a case in example where a student came to the examination room and they came with a faulty calculator, and it was a financial accounting paper. I want to tell you that this student was just switched off. So go with the right tools. That is one of the things. Now, second that I also need to highlight here to increase your chances of passing the exam, to be emotionally prepared, is get the examination room at least 30 minutes or more, so that you get yourself ready. I usually don't want to read from places that are away from the examination room on the day of the examination. I want to go and at least utilize the time. Now, like for example, when you look at where we do our examinations from our examination centers, there is some kind of space where you can do some of your preparation. So go a little early so that you reduce any chances of jam, any chances of any place that might affect you to get the examination late. And that is why you need to get there a little early as fast. Now, the other thing that you also need to do when you get to the examination, when you are being checked and you enter and you're given this examination paper, you're given 15 minutes to read through the examination paper and be able to make the choice of the question. Now, I want you to utilize this time, these 15 minutes, very importantly, okay? And during this time, they tell you you may not write anything on this within these minutes. Make sure that you're looking through the questions. That after they tell you, you can now start. You now have a choice of the questions that you're actually going to do, okay? So it's very important for you to know that when you actually preparing to go to, let's say, to do the exam, you know that I'm going to use the 15 minutes to actually prepare during this time. So it's very important. The 15 minutes have a greater impact on your passing the exam or not passing the exam. So make sure you utilize them well, note them down. For example, theoretical questions, you can easily just use at least that point time for you to easily remember. It's a point in time for you to reflect and say, will I be able to get all the 10 points on this question? Okay. Within there, you can easily make a choice. That by the time they tell you to start, you now know what exactly to concentrate on. The other thing that I also want to advise you when you're in the examination room, after they tell you start, after 15 minutes, start with the easiest questions, because these build your momentum. You're able to get motivated by doing another number when you've just started with a simpler number. Don't start with the hard numbers. There usually some section A questions that are a little longer, that will take a lot of your time. Start with section B. Start with those questions that you know you can take 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and they are done, and you're earning at least 20 marks plus. So start with the simpler questions and those questions that you've seen that are easier for you when you were doing the analysis within the 15 minutes. Okay, so that is helpful for you to build your momentum. One of the other things that I also want to ask you is allocate time on the respective questions. Don't spend a lot of time on one question when there are several other questions to do. And that's why I usually love you to time yourself. In some cases, you sit in an examination room where there are clocks around, but if you have a personal watch, please carry to the exam. Have something that can time you. And what this means is that if you've done a lot, you've spent a lot of time on a given question and think it's not moving, it's much easier for you to move to another question rather than focusing a lot on the examination, so that at the end of the day, the examiner does not have to cut you short when you actually still have questions to answer. So make sure that you say, I'm going to spend, let's say, for example, if it's a question, it's a paper that has, let's say, maybe you're doing a paper for 3 hours and you have to do, let's say, 5 questions. Now, if there are 3 hours, that's 180 minutes, okay? 180 minutes means that if there are 5 questions, you need on average, okay? You need on average about, let's say, 36 minutes, okay, on each, let's say, on each of the question minimally, okay? And maybe so let's get the 180 divided by the questions you have, and you're able to allocate. Now, if question 1 has a little higher, maybe more questions, then you know that I need to allocate more time to this first question. So it's very important that you calculate your time critically and see, I have, let's say, 180 minutes, okay, and then I have let's say over 5 questions. What can I exactly do during this time? If at all there are maybe, let's say, 3 questions, you know that 180 divided by 3, it means you have, let's say, 60 minutes on each, okay? But if at all the 180 is going to be divided by overall 5 questions, then you need to make sure that you're doing the right thing right there. So it's very important for you, especially when it comes to managing time, because you're going to end the exam with you not doing over 2 numbers because you've not managed your time. So it's important that you manage your time. The other thing that you also need to understand when it comes to the CPE exam is also make sure that you number your answers rightly, okay? Because if you don't number your answers, then the examiner will not be able to remember. Different examiners mark different questions, so one examiner will not just make an assumption that this is the question you've attempted. So when you number them, it gets much easier, okay, to help. So use, every time you've done with the question, use to look back and say, have I numbered this question rightly? It helps you, very important. One of the other things that I also want to highlight here is that how many marks that are allocated in a question is very important in making the decision on the time that you allocate to a question. If a question has 2 marks, it means that you don't have to spend over 10 or 30 minutes on just that question, rating an essay when they only required you to do something very small that will earn you the 2 marks. So how many marks are allocated in a question is very key for you. So make sure that you're considering, before you look at the effort you give to a question, look at also, especially for theoretical questions, look at how many marks are on a given question. That is very important, okay? So that you focus, see how long you spend on that question. The other thing that I also want to highlight here is when you're answering, especially for theoretical questions, make sure that you're using practical examples. Like practical example, remember this is a professional paper, so you want to make sure that you're bringing in the practical aspects for the examiner. Examiners are usually intrigued by practical examples. So when you explain something, say, e.g., MTN is maybe just announced that they will be maybe listing 20% of their shares on the stock exchange. Maybe if you're answering a number around that area. So make sure that you can easily relate. Where in times of COVID, if there's a question around COVID, bring up around about a practical experience that the examiner can be able to relate with. So the practical aspect is very key, especially for a professional paper like this. Now, one of the other things that I also want to highlight here is for papers like financial accounting, financial reporting, taxation, and so on. They are what we call the low-hanging marks, okay? The low-hanging marks, like make sure that you first get those fast easier marks to earn. Okay, these other marks of balancing, of reconciling, these may take you a lot of time because you have to press the calculator and sometimes you may make some mistakes. But first focus on the entries, those entries that can earn you marks, because instead of focusing on adding, which will take you a lot of time, jump to another question where you can first get the entries and then come back in the last minute to be able to now to balance off, and then you can be able to close off. So don't spend a lot of time on a question when you're not earning extra mark, let's say after every minute, after every 5 minutes. Make sure this every question you're on, whatever time you're spending there is actually earning you some marks. Okay, so that is very important. And then one of the other things that I also want to emphasize is show your working. Don't assume the examiner knows. Make sure that you're showing your working, and I want to tell you that that will help you to be able to get the marks, because some marks are actually within the working. So if you leave out these workings, it's something that really disturbs you. So make sure that you're showing that, as well as knowing that the examiner needs to see this. And where you have a chance, explain more. Don't assume that the examiner knows, just assume. So that is what I can share basically when it comes to passing the CPA exam. Make sure if you're new to this YouTube channel, please subscribe. I usually share a lot of information about the CPA program, about different papers like financial accounting, MDC, and other things around how you can basically grow within your accounting profession and be able to succeed. So I know you might have heard several things, people saying CPA is hard, but I want to tell you that if you do the simple things, these that I've highlighted, you'll actually pass this exam paper. And it's not only just about you getting the exam and doing whatever I've listed. Make sure you're doing the right preparations, that by the time you actually get to the exam, you actually know that you have all it takes to pass the exam. Don't spot the examiner. Make sure that the syllabus you have in hand, you've ticked off, and most of the topics, let's say all the topics, you at least have covered them, so you know that you are ready for the exam. Otherwise, I want to tell you that you can pass the exam highly, even if you die in this for the second time. I want to encourage you that go to the exam with a lot of confidence. Don't panic. Make sure you manage your time rightly. Make sure you're answering the questions with practical examples, and make sure that you're outside there to shine, because CPA is a very good course, and once you have it, you actually in opportunities. So thank you so much. Your coach Samuel Ivanda, always here to give you insights on how you can excel your CPA exam. Thank you so much, and please subscribe to this YouTube channel, and please share this message with a friend whom you think this will be important to. Otherwise, I wish you all the best success.